application. And police rescue the abducted victims in that Tuesday's deadly attack on the U.S. consulate convoy in Anambra State. Says operation is still ongoing.
This is Channels Television's breaking news.
And we begin with breaking news from the courts at this hour, as we understand that the court has nullified Mr. Alex Otti's candidature, as well as all Labour Party candidates in Abia State. The Federal High Court, set to be sitting in Kano, presided over by Justice M.N. Yunusa, has nullified the candidature of the Abia State Governor-elect, Dr. Alex Otti, and all the candidates of the Labour Party in Abia and Kano State. The court ruled that the emergence was not in compliance with the provisions of the Electoral Act 2022. A copy of the judgment, which was delivered, is titled the FHC/KN/CS. It was filed by Mr. Ibrahim Haruna Ibrahim against the Labour Party and the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and ruled that the failure of the Labour Party to submit its membership register to INEC within 30 days before their primaries renders the process invalid. Again, a Federal High Court sitting in Kano, presided over by Justice Yunusa, has nullified the candidature of Abia State Governor-elect Dr. Alex Otti and all the candidates of the Labour Party in Abia and Kano State. Well, this is a developing story, and we'll bring you more updates on that as the hours go by. Let's bring you also news just in. This one concerns security in the southeast, as joint security forces have rescued 2 victims who were abducted during an attack on a U.S. convoy in Ogbaru local government area of Anambra State. Now, according to the police public relations officer in the state, Ikenga Tochukwu, the rescue took place in the early hours of today, and operations still ongoing. 7 persons were killed in Tuesday's attack on a U.S. consulate convoy. They were on a mission to assess the impact of erosion in Ogbaru local government area in a convoy of 2 vehicles when they were attacked. And according to the Anambra State Commissioner of Police, Mr. Echengecheng, the convoy comprised 5 male officials of the U.S. consulate and 4 armed mobile police escorts from Lagos. 2 persons of interest have been arrested and are under interrogation by the police. The rescue operation was conducted by joint security forces comprising police tactical teams from the State Command and troops of the Nigerian Army and the Navy. They are said to have raided the suspected hideout camp in Ogbaru local government area, but met a deserted camp and razed down that camp. The presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, is not happy with the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's phone call to the President-elect Bola Tinubu, as he said that its basis lacked clarity. In a tweet earlier today, Mr. Obi said the 2023 presidential election was still being contested. His tweet reads in part, "There is still a lack of clarity on the basis of the U.S. Secretary of State Antony J. Blinken's call to APC's presidential candidate Bola Ahmed Tinubu on May the 16th, 2023. The most fundamental tenet and core value of democracy is the rule of law." He goes on to say Nigeria's democracy is founded on these principles, which the American people hold dear. Without the risk of interfering in Nigeria's domestic affairs, the U.S.-Nigeria relationship should be guided by the core values of democracy. He also goes on saying there is an evolving political and judicial process around the last presidential election in Nigeria, and we expect the United States to await the full resolution of ongoing judicial processes before tacitly conferring legitimacy on any of the contending parties. On the call, the American government official was said to have emphasized his continued commitment to further strengthen the U.S.-Nigeria relationship with the incoming administration. And now to the presidential election petition court, where the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the last election, Atiku Abubakar, has told the presidential election petition court that INEC is a meddlesome interloper in its defense of Bola Ahmed Tinubu on the qualifications for the election. But today's session, I should say, didn't see the drama that played out on Wednesday. However, the acting national chairman of the Labour Party, Mr. Lamidi Akpakpa, kept his word on returning there today. Also present when the tribunal resumed was the presidential candidate of Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, who exchanged pleasantries with the counsels to the respondents. Mr. Akpakpa was spotted seated at the back of the courtroom as opposed to the area that was reserved for Labour Party representatives. This comes after his appearance at the tribunal 2 days ago. I should also mention that Mr. Julius Abure is also in court, and we expect that, in fact, News Justine has it that the case has been adjourned to Saturday, May the 20th for continuation of pre-hearing. The court is meant to, well, this was meant to rule on the application of the PDP for live coverage of the proceedings. But we're told now that Mr. Atiku, through his lead counsel, Chris Uche, filed a counter-affidavit in opposition of INEC's request and asked the court to dismiss the electoral body's petition. He argued in the counter-affidavit that it was not the duty of INEC to do the battle or argue the case of Tinubu, who is the second defendant in the petition. So for the case of the PDP, it has been adjourned until tomorrow, May the 20th, for continuation of pre-hearing. Lots of things are happening almost, in fast procession. So we'll bring you all of the updates from the presidential elections petition court. But we'll stay in the realms of political party affairs. The Labour Party, where Mr. Julius Abure yesterday announced that he is back as the national chairman, saying that the Labour Party has no faction whatsoever in his rank. He also described Mr. Lamidi Akpakpa as having failed in his attempt to create a faction in the Labour Party. According to Mr. Abure, the FCT High Court in Abuja ceases to have jurisdiction over a suit praying for a restraining order over him. He was speaking in a press conference at the party's secretariat, where he told journalists that the earlier restraint by the FCT High Court has been set aside, as he says that the appeal is now at the Court of Appeal. Well, we'll take a moment now on the program, and when we return, we'll be getting more insights from a legal practitioner, what is currently playing out in court, the back and forth within the Labour Party, what the court's position is particularly, and not forgetting the breaking news from Kano regarding the candidature of Mr. Alex Otti, as well as other Labour Party candidates in Abia and Kano. That's in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to the program. So keeping our eyes on the developing story from the court in Kano State regarding Dr. Alex Otti's candidature, and of course the presidential election petitions court, which is sitting in the nation's capital, Abuja. And while we'll keep our eyes on that one, let's tell you that the leadership of the House of Representatives is debunking the allegation that $15 million was received from the executive arm of government to approve the request of President Buhari to restructure the 22.7 trillion naira ways and means advances, which was taken from the Central Bank of Nigeria. A statement from the spokesman of the House, Honorable Benjamin Kalu, describes the allegation as not only false, but also baseless and unfounded. The statement reads in part, "As elected representatives, our decisions and actions are taken in the public interest. It should be remembered that the House had temporarily deferred the approval of the executive's request following the recommendations of the relevant committees of the House, which called for further engagement with the executive in order to facilitate a comprehensive and meticulous analysis and deliberation on public interventions. The executive marked the said request for. But there's still more on the loans situation of Nigeria. This time, a legal luminary and university founder of Abia has been expressing worries that the indebtedness of Nigeria has gotten to an embarrassing height, which he says will repel any reasonable foreign investor. In a chat with journalists in Abia University at Ekiti after a lecture on smart infrastructure for better global development, the legal luminary says for Nigeria to attain a smart status, basic amenities must be available. And for him, the first priority of the incoming administration in its early years should be to deploy all efforts to secure debt forgiveness for Nigeria to redeem the economy from a precarious state.
Smart infrastructure depends upon availability of necessary infrastructure itself. If you have no electricity in a place, how can you talk about smart infrastructure? The first thing I am urging you, pressmen, is to recall my earlier statement that we are the worst debtor in the world today. We own trillions of dollars. We are borrowing more even when they are going away. And we learned that our incoming president has gone to look for those who are coming to invest here. The best thing I expect the incoming president to do is to learn from Obasanjo, who spent the first 2-3 years in going around to beg for forgiveness of our debt. Nobody is coming to invest here when we cannot even pay the interest, the money due on the huge debt we owe.
Part of efforts to recover public funds looted by some politicians, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, says that the governor of Zamfara State, Mr. Bello Matawale, is under investigation for alleged 70 billion naira fraud. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the Director of Public Affairs of the Commission, Mr. Osita Waja, says the Commission is presently handicapped by the constitutional immunity conferred on Governor Matawale and other governors who are also under investigation. He explains that the recent statement by Governor Matawale asking the anti-graft agency to investigate ministers and presidential aides is aimed at diverting attention from his activities as governor of the state. We have since reached out to Governor Matawale, his aides, and we expect that they will respond to these allegations. But take a listen to the EFCC spokesperson.
The Commission would like to put the nation on notice to expect more of the kind of wide allegations made by Mr. Matawale, as those at the receiving end of EFCC's investigation are fighting back viciously. But the real issue with Matawale is that he is being investigated by the EFCC over allegations of monumental corruption, award of phantom contracts, and diversion of over 70 billion naira. That is the issue. 70 billion naira investigation. That is the issue. Now I'll give you a little insight into what we have found so far. The money which was sourced as loan from an old generation bank, purportedly for the execution of projects across the local governments of the state, was allegedly diverted by the governor through proxies and contractors who received payments for contracts that were never executed. It's a loan. The Commission's investigation so far revealed that more than 100 companies have received payments from the fund with no evidence of service rendered to the state.
Well, let's now bring you some of the proceedings at the presidential election petitions court, some of them that have led until what played out today, where the candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, has been seeking to also get live coverage of the proceedings at the elections petitions court. Well, INEC's council, as well as the APC's council, have all opposed this request by both presidential candidates of the Labour Party and the PDP to have a live coverage of this petition. So let's just give you the backstory to this.
The team of lawyers for the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, and lawyers to the APC, the President-elect Bola Tinubu, and the Independent National Electoral Commission are back in court for the continuation of hearing of the petition by Atiku Abubakar challenging the victory of Bola Tinubu at the presidential election. This time, the court is billed to hear the application by Atiku, requesting that the proceedings of the court be televised. The justices arrive and settle into the day's business. In his argument, counsel to Atiku and the PDP, Chris Uche, prayed for an order of the court allowing the televising of proceedings, given the importance, seriousness, and national significance of the case. That prayer was opposed by the counsel to INEC, Abubakar Mahmood. He says bringing cameras into the courtroom would defeat the solemn atmosphere that the court is known for. He submits that the request for live coverage is unnecessary and uncalled for and should not be granted. In his argument, counsel to Tinubu, Wole Olanipekun, said he found Atiku's request as not only surprising but dangerous and capable of prejudicing the court. He further told the court that Atiku should not be allowed to turn the court into a football stadium or a circus ground where all manners of telecasts are permitted. He further warned that if the request is granted, it could expose judicial officers to avoidable dangers and demanded that a heavy cost be imposed on Atiku for making the request. Counsel for the APC, Lateef Fagbemi, was of the same view with the counsels to Tinubu and INEC. He faulted the request, adding that the facility and policy documents are not there for the application to be granted. After listening to other parties, Justice Haruna Samani reserved ruling. We caught up with the counsel to the PDP outside the courtroom.
Well, we are happy that our motion for televising of the proceedings has been taken today and ruling has been reserved. So that's a major accomplishment for today. Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, back in the courtroom, the court heard the petition of the Allied People's Movement. The respondents asked the court to either strike out some paragraphs or dismiss the petition. The justices subsequently adjourned to May 22 for further pre-hearing. Emanuela Ekele, Channels Television News.
Well, from the judiciary to the legislative arm of government, and this is more on one of our main stories regarding the ways and means back and forth. Well, a member of the House of Representatives, who's also a member of the House Committee on Loans, Aids and Debt Management, Honorable Yunusa Abubakar, has been shedding light on why the House of Representatives has, well, not gone the way of the Senate in approving the ways and means. And this is what he said on our breakfast program, Sunrise Daily. Take a listen.
The $800 million, there were so many talks that we did, especially we in the Loans Committee, and we advised them, first, leave this into the incoming government. But since the loan has been granted, well, we can collect. If we cannot use it, maybe the purpose and everything, when the incoming government comes, they may have different approach to issues. Maybe unlike this government that is there. Thank God, well, I wouldn't say it clearly, but it was on social media that probably they intended not to use any of Buhari's ministers because they have already rated them to have underperformed. So I'm coming. Yeah. So the issue is, yes, we have granted that loan. It is approved. So we want Nigeria to take it, but it is not going to be utilized by this outgoing government. Now, if the incoming government come, now we will see also their template, which they are writing it. I cannot divorce it out. So, but even that one that I said, I think that they will not use any of Buhari's ministers. This is from the background, you know, it's like...
So you've advised the National Assembly that they should go ahead and approve it?
Yeah.
That's your verdict?
Yes. But the utilization is on hold.
Well, that was the Honourable speaking on a range of issues, particularly now the $800 million loan from the World Bank, how it should be expended, and the rest. You can find the full interview, by the way, on our YouTube page. That's Channels TV on YouTube. But let's talk about the build-up now to the May 29th inauguration. President Buhari will, on May the 25th, that's Thursday, confer national honours on President-elect Bola Tinubu and his Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima. Well, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, made this disclosure while unveiling the program of events for the presidential inauguration. Mr. Mustafa, who doubles as a chairman of the Presidential Transition Council, explains that while Senator Tinubu will be conferred with the Grand Commander of the Federal Republic, that's GCFR, his vice, Senator Shettima, will be conferred with the Grand Commander of the Order of Niger, it's GCON.
On 25th of March, which is a Thursday, 2023, investiture of the President-elect and the Vice President-elect with national honors of Grand Commander of the Order of the Federal Republic, GCFR, which would be bestowed on His Excellency Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and GCON, which is Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger, which would also be bestowed on His Excellency Kashim Shettima, Vice President-elect. In addition to that, on the same day, the handover of transition documents will be undertaken. The Electoral Act in itself, as a matter of fact, envisages that a litigant can be between the tribunal and the appellate court 240 days, 180 for the determination of the petition, and 60 for the determination of the appeal. So our laws are very sacrosanct. They have placed these things in the public domain. That we will proceed with the inauguration of President-elect Asuwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu on the 29th. In spite of the litigations going on, the courts will take their time and deal with those matters.
And just before we go, let's bring you the breaking news one more time, that Justice Mohammed Yunusa of the Federal High Court in Kano has nullified the candidature of the Abia State Governor-elect, Dr. Alex Otti, and all the candidates of the Labour Party in Abia and Kano State. The court ruled that the emergence was not in compliance with the provisions of the 2022 Electoral Act in the suit filed by Mr. Ibrahim Haruna against the Labour Party and INEC. The judge ruled that the failure of the Labour Party to submit its membership register to INEC within 30 days before their primaries renders the process invalid. He ruled that the party, which has not complied with the provisions of the Electoral Act, cannot be said to have a candidate in an election and cannot be declared winner of an election. Therefore, the vote credited to Dr. Alex Otti says is a wasted vote. Well, there you have it. Developing story, clearly, and we'll definitely be here to bring you the updates as they come in. But that's the program for this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Kayode Kikuli. Goodbye.